Right. So, hello everyone. I'm Trinity Loftus. I'm known as the Downtown Speech Mom on Instagram. We want to welcome everybody to our Zoom chat today. Today's extra special because we're talking about a topic that's very important to me currently, which is summer travel prep and sleep. My husband and I sit down every January and talk about what our year is going to look like for travel. And this year we're thinking about traveling further outside of the United States. And we were planning it. I was like, does this sound like a good idea? My husband's like, I think you should call Ann Marie and see what she says. She's our sleep guru. You've helped train both of our boys. And I didn't know this when I first became a mom, that sleep is this long process. You have to kind of like teach your kid to sleep and then continue to change that habit, which is like, you have a baby and they're like, good luck. And so I feel like this is something that I'm like learning, and thank goodness we've found you. And so I wanted to talk today and help our families kind of think about sleep and think about travel and kind of think about it as a whole. So why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah,
a little bit about what you do.
sounds wonderful. So first, before I introduce myself, I'm so happy that Mark said, I think you should talk to Ann Marie. That makes me that makes my heart sing, because usually it's like mostly talking to moms. I'm going to say like 75% of the time. So the fact that your husband was like, talk to you.
Yeah, this is the girl that knows.
That makes me so happy. So hello, everyone. My name is Ann Marie Harriger. I am the creator of AM Smile Sleep Training. I have been helping families get better sleep for the past, it's going to be 7 years in May. I can't believe it that long. Yes. So I'm super excited to be talking with you today, Tony Ann. Oh, a little personal background. I have 3 boys. My oldest son's going to be 13 in 2 weeks. I don't know how I'm possibly old enough to have a teenager.
Yeah.
Because somehow I have not aged at all. But I have a 13-year-old, 10-year-old, and 7-year-old. And, you know, just to kind of like piggyback on what you said about sleep and how it is this ongoing thing, right? It really is. A lot of times I just kind of point out to parents that your child's sleep is evolving all the time. So it's really important to just have that awareness, right? Because you find a routine or habit that's working and just don't get too comfortable. You have to be ready to evolve and to grow with your little one as they're growing. So just a little tidbit to agree, because that's like such an important piece to point out to parents.
Yeah, and I feel like the first year of life, sleep changes so much, and then you kind of get into that groove. And now our oldest is 4.5, and it's like, oh man, like he's not as tired when he goes to bed, but he's exhausted in the morning, and you're like, how do I kind of like adjust for that? And like on the weekends, do I let him sleep? It's just so crazy that like they're each going through like their own separate journey, and like kids are so different. I feel like Max hated sleep. Do you remember? Like I called you like desperate. Like he won't sleep, and he's like in his bed for like a really long time, not sleeping. And Teddy's kind of like the opposite. You got him sleep trained in one night. Well, it's probably because I started off with your sleep class from the hospital. We were like, Mark and I were like listening about what to do like the day we gave birth about the sleep, but we shaped that, and then we had a really great sleeper, and I think it made a ton of difference. But like their sleep cycles are so different. So like we're like thankful, but also like, holy cow, like how could kids be like so different in like every aspect of their life?
And share DNA, right?
Live in the same house, being raised by the same people with the same like kind of values. So it's like bizarre. And like their language is like developing differently, like rhetorically. Like Max is on the later end of the milestones, Teddy's on the beginning and the end of milestones. It's just like so bizarre how it goes. And so like, with Max, we never had the guts to travel. Mark and I actually went away without him. And we went to Paris. Mark, after the pandemic, I was like, I just want to go to Paris for Christmas. It's all I want. We went in 2022. My mother-in-law stayed graciously and watched Maxwell, but I mostly because we were like kind of scared to bring him because of the time change. Yeah. So we're like, oh, 2's too young. But now Teddy's going to be 2 next October, but we're thinking about in August, like take in him overseas on a giant airplane.
Yeah. No.
And so, I want to think about like, what does that mean? Like, how do I select a flight time like that works for both Teddy and Max and like mom and dad? Like, how do I, like, where do I be flexible? Where do I like kind of say this is like the plan? Because I feel like that's the very first step. You like look at you look at a hotel, you want to make sure they have like dark space, like that I got. You want to make sure it's comfortable sleeping for everybody, like bring the blankies, got that. But like, how do I like, first of all, get there?
Yeah. So much to unpack, pun intended. So, okay. Step one, talking about the flights, like you said. A big part before you go into do any travel is to just remember that flexibility is a really key part here. And the reason is that you are not going to have a travel where everything aligns perfectly with your schedule. So you need to go into this knowing, hey, we're going to find the flight that is going to, fill in the blank, which I'm going to help you with this. But a really important part is to just know that you're going to have a better experience if you're a little more fluid, right?
Unless you hire a private jet and you leave at the most ideal time. So like, that's not a choice.
Right, exactly. So in terms of flight times, okay, what you want to think about is you want your child getting onto the plane, having had a good day of regular activity, had their nap. And I would suggest a time that's like a little bit before bedtime. So let's use some hypothetical times.
Right.
Bedtime is 7:30. I think you should be getting your child ideally on the plane around like 5:30. Now this also take into consideration, this is for a 6-hour flight, right? So
right.
We can talk domestic in a little bit, but right now you're talking about big travel.
Right.
And the reason is, when you put your baby on a plane, or not put them on a plane, but bring them on the plane with you, right? There is a lot going on. There is a lot of stimulation, and it takes time for baby to get acclimated. And also, like, this is an experience. You don't want to get your baby on the plane at 7:30 or 8 o'clock and be like, okay, now it's time to go to sleep and we're going to feed you, and like try to like jump right into it, because your little one, their eyes are like all over the place. Like, where am I? I'm seeing different things. I'm hearing different things. It smells
different things. Yeah.
Every sense is like spiking, right? Because there's like so much going on. So you want to get onto that plane being like, okay, we got through security. We made it to our seats, and like, let's look out the window, or let's like hold baby up to kind of like look around, or, let's, I don't know, bring a book that shows picture of a plane so they can kind of be like, seeing what I always love tying everything with books. I know you feel that.
Me, same. Same. I love a book.
So like just kind of giving yourself that time to like get comfortable. And here we are on the plane. And then, you know what, little ones, they have a short attention span. They're not going to need like forever to look around and get used to their surroundings, but you really want to have that time buffered in, right?
Right.
Because if you're hoping for your little one to get on a 7 p.m. flight and be asleep by 7:30, you're setting yourself up for it not working out the way you want it to, right?
Right. Totally.
So I would say to really plan on that type of flight, which, by the way, notice I didn't say like 5 a.m. because if you're doing a really early flight like that, you're pulling your baby out of bed at like 2 or 3 a.m., which is just like, even if they were to fall back to sleep on the way to the airport, or when you are at the airport, they doze, like that's not going to be the high quality restorative sleep that they get in their crib. And so the reason I say this is you're starting your trip, your vacation off with a really cranky baby. You don't want to start that way. You also don't want like the, 10 p.m. flight where little one goes to bed at 7 and now you're taking them out of the crib at 8 p.m. to, it's just like, you want to, let's put it in a really simple kind of like visual way. I'm a very visual person. Think of it, ideal is bringing your baby onto this plane with a full sleep tank, right? So like they've had their regular day, they had their regular nap,
Right.
and at bedtime, they will start to be ready to, do the thing. So that was long-winded, but that's kind of
No, that makes total
things
sense.
to keep in mind.
Like, yeah. And then I guess, kind of thinking about like the natural sleep time, and I actually didn't think about like making sure that they get like a good solid nap in that day. I'm thinking like even to have like a quiet time for Max, who's 4.5, like beforehand, so like he isn't like dead exhausted, tired, like on the trip over to the airport. And then do you think like kids get better sleep? Like, is that okay to have Teddy the baby kind of like lay on me as opposed to getting his own seat, like in his car seat? Like, what is the better kind of like rest there?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you have a very little one, infant, you're talking like 3-month-old baby or something, they might sleep okay in the car seat. I mean, I personally paid for a car seat once for one of the boys, and it was a waste of like $500 because I did not want to be in that car seat. One positive thing was that we had that space. So that's, up
Not
to
the
you.
end of the world.
Yeah, that's your priorities. Do you want to pay to have extra space for comfort on the plane? But all in all, I think your little one's going to sleep on you. And like, that's okay. That's not going to undo any sleep habits or anything, because that's not what your priority is when you're on the plane.
Right. And I think that's sometimes like my biggest fear, even like studying development, knowing that like one tiny little blip is like going to change their course of development. I like freak out. I'm like, oh my God, I did this one thing where like I picked him up and rocked him because he was crying, and now I'm going to like completely ruin it.
Right. Yeah.
And now my whole vacation is going to be like, oh my God, stressed out about like whatever. But it's, everything is like kind of like the phase, and it's kind of hard to say like, here's like our ideal, what we want to do, and like setting expectations. I feel like it's so different as like a parent, like thinking about like, we're going to have fun. This is supposed to be fun. And so like being flexible even more so on vacation is like the key and like the goal.
No, well, you just said two really big things here. So my major takeaway when I talk to families who say we're traveling, what do we do? Tell us what to do. The first thing that I remind them of is you're going on vacation. This is for enjoyment.
Right.
Your main goal here is to enjoy yourself. So like, know that. And, by the way, I say this with experience of doing the opposite. When my family went on vacation, my youngest son was 2, and he was a perfect sleeper, no surprise, of course, but he was a great sleeper. And here we are on vacation, and he would not nap. And so I honestly kind of like ruined a couple days on our vacation because I was like hell bent on him getting this nap. And in hindsight, it's be ready to make accommodations around, okay, he's not going to nap in here. What can we do? To make sure he's still getting sleep. We don't want him overtired, but do not spend your day working on this nap when, your kid, who ideally doesn't fall asleep in the stroller or in the car seat or whatever, they can do that because you're on vacation, you're not home, and things are going to be different. So like, I know that wasn't really your question, but when you said that part about we're here to have fun, that's like such an important thing to remind parents of.
Like, I don't want to miss the London Eye because I'm going to go and try to get Teddy to take a nap. And so like, everybody's mad that we didn't go get it done and Teddy didn't sleep. So now we have to go to bed early.
Yes,
and so
exactly.
Like, that's the hard piece, because now he can't make it to that cool dinner spot. And now the whole day is kind of like kind of wish-washy. And when you're over in Europe, you're not going there for like giant chunks of time where you're like, oh, I could just try it again tomorrow. You spend a few days there trying to figure things out. And so that's kind of, before we do any major plans, and I get my heart set on doing the London Eye, and like
Yeah.
Max wants to go see the first ever steam locomotive is in London. He wants to go see
Aw.
Philly. And so like I want to make sure that how do we set that up for success is like, you know, do we do that in the morning before nap? So if we don't, you know, kind of miss that. And so that kind of like brings me to the next point about like time zone differences. Like how do we kind of like adjust? Because I know when I get to Europe, the first thing I don't do is, and the first thing I do is stay up, power through.
Right.
Or do that first day. And like that's really hard for me as an adult. So I'm like kind of anticipating what that would look like for me as a mom. Because now I have not only just myself to stay awake for, now I have 2 kids to stay awake for. So like, how do I adjust? I've heard some people say, you know, you don't have to fully adjust them if you want them to stay up a little later, but like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, so the thing is what you're saying about, you know, when you're traveling east, right, is that you do try to like stay up so that you can start to acclimate quickly. Right. An adult deciding, hey, I'm really tired, but I'm going to stay awake is a completely different situation than trying to keep your 19-month-old and your 4.5-year-old awake. Because what's going to happen is they're going to melt on you. And now
quite literally
tired with 2 kids who are a puddle. Seriously, you know, so that's not an option. You know, you can like try to extend a little bit, but what I'm going to say is that's going to backfire on you.
Okay. This is great information.
Yeah. So honestly, I think you want to, you know, really kind of like lay it out looking at the times, right? This isn't something you can just like wing in your head because it is so mathematical. Right. If you can embrace that time difference, meaning that, you know, if the kids stay up later, right, and now you're able to do dinners at 8 p.m. where that isn't usually the case, then do that. Let them stay up later than their normal bedtime, because now when you're traveling back home, you're not trying to recover 2 ways, right? Like trying to have just 6 hours when you get there, and then when you get home, trying to have your kid adjust 6 hours again. It's really very involved and it's hard. And so if you can, you know, kind of just get on local time like a little bit, you know what I mean? You don't need to fully adjust. You don't need to try to get to a 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. schedule there. If that involves now, because your baby's, you know, obviously used to New York time, now they're staying up a little bit later, sleeping in a little bit later, or, you know, now they're going to bed a little bit earlier, waking up earlier, you know, kind of like planning your itinerary based on not trying to get 100% adjusted. Does that make sense?
No, that totally makes sense. So thinking about like, you know, if they're tired and it's 2:00 in the afternoon, it might be the time to like give them a nap, but then wake them up to go to dinner and kind of like give them instead of like powering through, because that's not going to be like,
they're not going to be able to power through is what it is. Adults really can, because we're adults and we have more control over, I'm tired, but I'm going to make myself stay awake. And kids, by the way, I'm tired, they're not going to be able to stay awake. Or if you're really trying to push them, they're now like just falling apart on you.
Like, no, totally. And I see that with Max sometimes too. He's like, I'm not tired. And you're like, well,
yeah.
So your body's saying otherwise. You're giving me other cues to let me know. So no, that's like a really good like point to think about, like when we're traveling overseas, about like, I don't know, I just being outside was something I read in your travel guide about your sleep travel side, like getting outside, getting that sunlight, like thinking about all of that. And then like I love the idea of being like, you know, Paris wakes up at 8 p.m. and like that's the time to see that Eiffel Tower at night, and like that's one of the things that like I think it's so cool, because like we were out at dinner recently in Tribeca and it gets so dark so early. Max like, the sky is gone. And I'm like, oh, you've never been outside when it's dark?
Oh, that's so cute. Oh my gosh.
It's not something that we ever did when he was a kid. We were always at home by 6 p.m. every single night. So and I was like, wow, we kind of lived a little bit of a rough life there for a couple of years. But now, like with Teddy, second kid, we're always like, come on, let's let's go
much
try
more.
dinner.
Yeah.
Right. And you get home it's at 6:15, and like you could still do the whole routine.
Right.
Nothing is like off track. And it makes that like witching hour a little bit easier for us
Yeah.
now. But like I thought it was just so funny that he's like, the moon is outside and I'm outside. And you're like, yeah, that's so cool. But like that would be like a really cool experience to be able to do that every night on vacation and like get an extra kind of like aspect of the city, like while we were there with that time zone difference.
Tower here has quite a light show. You can't miss that. So
I know, and like a little boat ride. He's like very excited about all of that. And so I also feel like, you know, thinking about like while it's going to be disruptive to like every day, it's going to be worth it in the end. It's like he's going to be able to like, you know, he's very interested in books, and so like he's really obsessed with these books called This Is, and this is London, this is Paris, this is Rome. And it's so funny because a friend of mine was like, you read a lot of travel books, and I was like, right, but I'm a smart mom, because when my husband's like, what should we do today, he's like, I would like to go to Paris. Like, yes, you would, my darling.
Me too, buddy. Yeah.
You should go tell daddy that you would like to go to Paris. And like he's learning about things at school too, about the continents, and he's like walking around singing, and I'm like, how cool it'd be to like think about that educational experience and match that up. And so like, you know, in the long run, it's going to be lovely and fun to like, and like thinking about like solidifying his language. And I think starting things earlier, it will just kind of become second nature. It's like skiing, right? If you want your kid to be a good skier, you got to start when they're 3. If you want your kid to be a well traveler, you got to start now. And I feel like we've always been scared. Right. So I feel like first time mom, I was like super scared for everything, but now I'm like kind of ready to like create this balance. And poor Teddy's going to be like a little bit of like, where am I?
Great.
But any other kind of like tips that you might have for families that are like, you know, do you do it? Do you not do it? What's like kind of the ideal range? Is it just like, is it more about the parents than it is about the kids? Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Okay. So I have 2 big things. So the first is actually going to be a product. I'm not a big product person.
Okay.
You have a child who is in a crib or in a pack and play, you want to get the slumber pod.
Obsessed with the slumber pod.
Yes, because what this does, right, is this makes it so when you're in your hotel room, your child has their own studio apartment within your hotel room, right? For a lot of families, and I know especially for me, that was one of the most difficult parts of traveling, because my kids were not used to sleeping in the same room as us.
Right.
So it was like we would lay him down and he would just be up like, hey guys, like, you know. Or by the way, when they were babies, they're intuitive. They can sense you. They know that you're there. It's just like off. So it was either that difficulty with actually falling asleep, or what would happen is now my husband and I are like sitting in the bathroom talking because we don't want to be in bed at 7 p.m. And so now that's the only place we can talk that's like away, so it's not interrupting the kids. So the slumber pod is awesome, and you definitely want to invest in one of them. Travels easily, and
incredible. Right before we went to Disney World last year, you were like, get a slumber pod. I was like, how do I even start?
Yes.
I want to do this. And I was like, what is this thing? The first time we put it together, I was like, is this the first time my husband are get into a fight? Because the thing's like, you know, it's like kind of crazy to figure out. But once you do it one time, it's super easy. But I climbed in there to see like how dark, and I was like, I would like one of these for an adult, please. Thank you.
Yeah, right. Yes. And also it's very breathable, right? So you don't have to worry about that. It's made for just this. So it's 100% safe in every way. It has a little spot that you could put the monitor
and the fan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Amazing.
So get one of those. Aside from that is, I'm going to actually talk about what happens when you get home, right? Because what I hear from so many families is, my baby was sleeping great. We went away. We came home. You know, that was 5 months ago, and our sleep is still awful. We never recovered from the travel. Because so the thing is that things do get off when you're traveling, right? That's kind of what I started with the flexibility. So go into it with the expectation that it's not going to be exactly like it is at home. And that's okay, right? Because you're not there to have great sleep habits. You're there for your trip, your experience. Certainly everyone needs to sleep while you're away, but because of that need, you might end up doing things that you wouldn't normally do at home. Like, right, you know, a 2-year-old, for example, could be very overwhelmed by being in a different place or a little confused. So you do X, Y, and Z because that's the only way he's sleeping, and that's okay.
Right. Baby wear, lay flat in the yo-yo, do all the things.
Anything, right? Because everyone needs to sleep, and you don't have your arsenal like you do at home. You don't have the options that you do at home. So a big thing, right, is the awareness of, okay, we went away, we did X, Y, and Z, which we would never do. Okay, now we're home, right? And we're getting right back to it. So that's like a really important step, is to, you know, just, again, it's like the word awareness. I can't say it enough. It's just, we're home, and now we're going to have our regular routine. We're going to have our regular sleep setup. Everything is going to be the same as it normally is. Because I think sometimes, you know, families just kind of like fall into whatever it is they're doing, and then it just snowballs. And now, you know, it's like, we sleep trained our kid, you know, 8 months ago, everything was going great. And how did we get back here? We worked so hard to have sleep habits, and now our sleep habits suck again. And so just go, when you get home, have a talk with your partner, write out your plan. Like, I know I work with my clients get like a plan, like a video plan, that's theirs to keep. So like, take that out and watch it again, like refresh yourself, right? Because if you haven't had to execute a plan in a while, it can be like, oh my gosh, what do we do? I don't even remember, you know? So like, you know, we're getting back to our regular sleeping arrangement where everybody sleeps good, and you are going to actually have to carry out a plan then, because things have gotten off, right? So like, not only have the awareness that here we are, we're back home, we need to get back to our regular sleeping arrangement, but you also need to be very consistent in order to get there. Does that make sense?
Right. But so that's when you get home. The consistency is at home, and the flexibility is while you're gone. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so just be prepared to have to reset, right? Like the families that I work with, they went through the sleep training process. And so after a travel, you don't have to sleep train again, because you did that. You only have to do that once. What you need to do now is reset, which involves being very consistent so that your baby has the encouragement and the space to sleep the way they can sleep, right? Because those skills don't go anywhere. They just kind of get, again, I love being visual. Those skills got buried a little bit, right? Because they were out of the country or staying at grandma's, anything there.
Right.
Things got off. And so now here we are, we're home, and you're like going to uncover those good sleep skills by being consistent. Consistency is always the key ingredient to get back on track.
Amazing. You're giving me a lot of confidence to go away. I feel like our family is like kind of like starting to be ready. Like, I don't know, the world opened up after, you know, we had a COVID baby, the world opened up, and we're just kind of like still trying to find our footing. But I feel like this year we're ready for like something big. We've done the domestic thing. You know, we've gone to Disney World. I remember you were like, you can do this.
Yeah.
This is fun. And I was like, Ann Marie, it's not fun.
Yeah. No,
we had the best time. We really had the very best time. And I think that's because we like set ourselves up for success before we left. We set our expectations very low, and that was okay. You know, Teddy fell asleep on me while I was wearing him on the way to Orlando 3 hours after he was supposed to fall asleep. But like, everybody survived, and we came home and everybody was also fine.
Exactly. Yeah. So just know that. And
we hate a pack and play still, but you know.
No, I mean,
mine hates those mattresses.
Yeah.
But like,
you
they're like,
try to like make them a little more comfy with some foam. That's for a different day though. That's not
No, I know. You know what? And I have to say, people at Disney World are like incredible. They're like, oh, he doesn't like this. Let's see what else we have. They're so amazing.
Nice.
You know, recently we traveled for Thanksgiving too. We were in Tennessee. We were at Dolly World. It was
Okay. Yeah.
a twist of events for us. But like the people there were so lovely. They were like, we have these like kind of thin things that we can put underneath the sheet. But it's like nice. Where there's a will, there's a way to like kind of figure out how to make them as cozy as possible.
Again, ability.
Amazing. So thank you so much for these tips. I'm like ready to get on the computer tonight and book flights around 5 p.m. And like
I love it.
Hotel room, have my slumber pods, figure out all of the things. Can you tell us where people can find you? If they have more in-depth questions or they want to work with you, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel that I am all over Instagram. It is AM Smile Sleep Coach. I think you could probably link it in there, right?
Because I could definitely link all of this.
Right. So AM Smile Sleep Coach is my handle. I have a website that is amsmilesleeptraining.com.
And they could sign up for a free consultation.
Absolutely.
There.
Yep.
And I think those are so helpful, right? Because you're like, I don't know what I need, and I don't even know where to start. And so like you can kind of help. I feel like one of the things you said to me was like, oh, read this guide first or watch this class first. And that kind of helps me develop like to even know what to ask. So it's so lovely that you offer those. I always recommend that people take advantage of those because you're like, oh, I never would have thought you could have helped with that.
Right. Well, and also, you know, my big thing that my kind of like leg that I stand on, I don't know if that's the right phrase, but so many parents, moms in particular, are like, I have tried everything. My baby just can't sleep. I've tried it all. There's no way. And those are the people that I help the most. The people who feel like they have done everything.
Yeah, those are my people.
Well, they're motivated. They want this, but they've just tried it all and they feel like nothing's working. That or moms who are like, I need sleep. My baby needs sleep. I'm so tired. I have no idea where to start. Right. So those are my people too. The ones who feel they've tried everything and it just won't work, or the families who feel like they are just overwhelmed by the volume of baby sleep info out there, because it is really overwhelming. To really, you know, figure out a plan that's going to be tailored to them, that's going to work. And one last little piece that I do want to plug, if that's okay, is the families that I work with, I do guarantee results. So I know that a lot of families, dads in particular, are like, you know, what happens if it doesn't work? Then what?
Right.
And so I'm so confident in the practice that I use, the practices, that I use with the families I work with, that I do guarantee results. So
that's amazing. And I will have to say, like, we continuously come back to you for all the sleep needs. And like, you never make me feel like, well, that was dumb. You know what I mean? Like every time I call you, you're like always so welcoming. And like, I feel like you've seen it all. Cause sometimes I'm like, she's going to think I'm absolutely nuts. Well, like you never make me feel like crazy, which is like really great, because a lot of times you get on the internet and you're like, oh, I'm nuts. There's so many things out there like, oh, I haven't tried this, I haven't tried that. And so it's like very nice to find somebody that you're like, okay, I can relate to this person, and like they're gonna make me feel like confident, and that I can like go and do the thing. You know, like the very first time I sleep trained Max was before I met you, and I was like, oh God, what do we do? And I remember like pacing and being like, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, like I feel nuts right now. But it's funny, I never felt that way. I always felt like confident going in with a plan. So I want to say thank you, because that's been so lovely. So lovely.
Well, that makes me so happy to hear. So thank you for sharing. And
thank you so much for your advice.
I can't wait to hear about your trip.
Okay, thank you.